Hello again, students. Welcome to our primary document discussion for Module 6, Jacksonian America. Today we're going to be talking a lot about manifest destiny. So all of these 4 documents for today, so if you want to go ahead and get them out either in a new tab or pull out a paper copy, we're going to be talking about John O'Sullivan, Diary of a Woman Migrating to Oregon, A Chinese Merchant Complains of Racist Abuse, and Cherokee Petition Protesting Removal. So 4 documents today, all about this theme of manifest destiny. And all 4 of these documents will be talking about how to answer that 4th question, a little bit of the 3rd, but mostly the 4th question on our learning objectives, explaining how manifest destiny played out in the real world, both for the people who it helped and the people who it didn't really help. So first of all, what is manifest destiny, right? Our first document, John O'Sullivan, talks about that. This idea, that phrase, manifest destiny, is first created by John O'Sullivan. He's a newspaperman, he's a columnist, he's a writer, and he's the first one to use that phrase. Right in that very first paragraph, at the end of the first paragraph, he says, other nations have undertaken to intrude themselves, limiting our greatness and checking the fulfillment of our manifest destiny to overspread the continent. All right, so what does that mean? He says, what does that mean? Answer. He says that it is America's duty, America's God-given right to spread over the entire continent. By this time, 1845, America is really quite well established to the Appalachians, the Mississippi River, but everything west of that is very iffy. And so he says that it is Americans' destiny, Americans' God-given right to spread the entire continent, all the way to the Pacific Ocean. So let's hold on to John O'Sullivan. He's got a lot of other things going on in that document that I want to talk about later. But first, let's talk about the pros, such as they are. The good side of America's manifest destiny to spread over the continent and bring civilization to the wilderness. For some people, it does work out very well. For some people, most particularly white Americans, this idea of manifest destiny works very well, and we can see that in the document called Diary of a Woman Migrating to Oregon. So first of all, who is writing this? What is this? And what's the message? Right, this woman is named Amelia Knight. She is a white American, white mainstream American, and she's moving from the east to the west, all the way to Oregon, all the way to the Pacific Ocean. And this is a diary, and these are excerpts from her diary, just short little notations that she's not necessarily intending to show anybody, but it is eventually published. It's just for her. So this is very candid. This is a very candid, very honest snapshot, if you will, of her thoughts as she's moving across the continent. So let's work through some of the entries here. April 16th. She's talking about the wet, the mud. Seneca, her daughter, is half sick. The 23rd, she talks about it rained all night. I've been very busy cooking, roasting coffee. I've barely had time to write this and make our bed. So, okay, first of all, what are some of the concerns that she is showing as she's on this journey? Right, think back to that idea of coverture, right? She's very concerned with the domestic sphere. All of her first entries here are about her children, are about the conditions of her home, such as it is, on their way. Her activities circle around cooking, washing, sewing, cleaning, packing things away. She's concerned with her daughter and her family, very domestically oriented. And this is par for the course for a lot of women as they move into the, across the Oregon Trail into the interior of the continent. But it doesn't last. It doesn't last. Friday, May 6th, pleasant. Except for the fact we have just passed the Mormon graveyard. There are a great number of graves in it, she says. Children were mourning for a father gone. So, relatively quickly, on the Oregon Trail, these settlers are engaged by death in various ways. It's a long road. It's a hard road. They're not always very well prepared. There are a lot of dangers, natural dangers, the weather, trying to cross rivers. Possibly they are attacked. Snakes. What's that movie? 1001 Ways to Die in the West, right? It's a dangerous place. Death is ever present. There's this intense story that I read in another diary of a child, a little girl, and she's become ill. She's gotten some sort of disease, and she's dying, and she knows she's dying, and she's crying in her mother's arms. But that's not why she's crying. She's not afraid of dying. What she's afraid of is being buried in a shallow grave and them not putting rocks on top of it, and the coyotes coming and digging up her body and eating her after she's dead, like she saw was happening at the grave a few miles back. Children are living with the ever-present fear of death, and death isn't the problem for them. What's the problem for them is that they're going to be dug up by coyotes and ate. So it's not pleasant. It's not a pleasant trip. Towards the end, or the middle of the end of that second page, she starts talking, Amelia Knight here, starts talking about the people whom she encounters, the Native Americans. She says in the June 28th entry, all along this road we've seen white men living with Indians. I've sold things to a native for $15 on the 18th. She talks about having to guard the stock all night, being afraid of people attacking it. The 25th entry, she talks about being on top of a high round sand hill, a fine mark for the Indians. She's dealing with this ever-present fear of moving west into land that she deep down knows isn't hers and where she isn't welcome. But as far as that goes, what happens at the end? It doesn't say in particular in so many words, but what do we know happens to Amelia Knight in the end? She makes it to Oregon. Her and her family establish a farm and a little mission out there, and they do just fine. They make it. They make it through all the hardships, they endure all the troubles, and they have a really nice life. And it's all because of this idea of manifest destiny. For them, it works. It's not easy, but it works very well for them. Manifest destiny doesn't work well for everybody else. And that's what we have to realize. So let's go back then to John O'Sullivan document again. Let's leave Amelia Knight over there. So we've talked in this, or we've read, I suppose, in this unit, in this module, about a lot of different people and how different groups of people, and how they react and interact with this idea of manifest destiny. One of the topics we talked about was the U.S.-Mexican War. How do Mexicans handle manifest destiny, and what happens in Texas and California with them. So thinking about the John O'Sullivan document, towards the end of the first page there, starts talking about Texas. The end of the second paragraph. Okay, he says, the independence of Texas was complete and absolute. If Texas became peopled with an American population, it was by no contrivance of our government, but on the express invitation of that of Mexico herself. Yes, absolutely, John O'Sullivan. The Mexican government looked at the American government and said, yes, please do come in and start this war and steal our land. We really would love that if you could take our land from us. Yeah, no. So if we read in the textbook about the U.S.-Mexican War, and to be honest, this is not my favorite part of this textbook. It really does make it out to say, like John O'Sullivan implies or states, that Mexico loved having the Americans invade. No. John Pope really just basically stole Texas. I don't know if I can say that. I'm 10 minutes into this video. I'm going to say it anyway. I'm not going to go back and redo this video. Yeah, he steals Texas because it's a war. It is the only U.S. war where, well, I guess I shouldn't say that. It is the first U.S. war where the United States is an aggressor. It is the first U.S. war where the United States attacks on foreign land. It is the first war where the U.S. occupies a foreign capital. And most people are really on board with this. But a very select few, but a very loud minority are not. And call the U.S. out. And call John O'Sullivan and this view out and say, no, the Mexican government did not invite the U.S. to take what basically amounted to a quarter of their country and add it to ours. But it did happen. You know, moral of the story, spoiler alert, the United States does get Texas. And in the next paragraph of this John O'Sullivan document, we talk about California. He says, California will probably next fall away from the loose adhesion. Well, it does. In Texas and California, a small group of American settlers go there, establish residency, form ranches and farms, and marry the local women, and form families and live their lives, but all with the express purpose of someday those areas splitting away from Mexico and joining the United States as a state. This is what's called a filibuster. We always hear about that word filibuster being used like on the floor of the Senate or on the floor of the House. Somebody talking and talking and talking like I'm doing right now, trying to stop a bill. There is a second meaning to that word, where a group of people go to a place, establish residency, and establish lives and occupations with the express purpose of that place sometime in future joining their home country. And that's what happens in Texas. That's what happens in California. That's what will happen much, much later in Hawaii. It is a filibuster. There's a lot of ethnic prejudice, especially when we're talking about the U.S.-Mexican War, like what he is talking about here. So I'll stop on my tangent. We'll go back. John O'Sullivan, that third paragraph, when he's talking about California, he talks about a lot of that ethnic prejudice. He says, imbecile, idiotic, stupid, and distracted, Mexico can never exert any real government authority over such a country. The impotence of the one and the distance of the other must make the relation one of virtual independence. He says, Mexico is distracted. Mexicans are stupid. Mexicans can't control their own country. It's just a matter of time before Texas and California split away and join the much bigger and much better and much more powerful and much more capable country of the United States. Of course. Towards the middle, I guess, of that paragraph, he says, already the advance guard, oh my gosh, he's admitting it. Already the advance guard of the irresistible army of Anglo-Saxon has begun to pour down upon it, California. Armed with the plow and the rifle, marking its trails with schools and colleges, courts and representative halls, mills and meeting houses, churches, meeting houses. So here we see some of the weapons of civilization. Here we see some of the weapons of manifest destiny. He calls it an army. He calls it an advance guard. These settlers are going out into the West in general with the express purpose of bringing civilization, bringing America's idea of civilization, bringing Christianity, bringing military rule, bringing education and enlightenment, bringing laws and representative halls and churches, some of the weapons of manifest destiny. That's one way it worked out, or didn't. for people. So if you're answering that fourth question, you got a lot of options here of things that you could use. Maybe you want to talk about Mexico, Texas, California. You might also, thinking about California, want to talk about Asians. We always think about immigration to the West coming from the East into the West. Well, there's also people moving from the West into the East. People coming from Asia, people coming from China and Japan, and landing on the shores of California. So our third document for today, Chinese merchant complains of racist abuse. In that little introduction, we see how 1849, there's this massive gold rush in California. And that, of course, includes a lot of white Americans who rush into California to try to strike it rich and find gold. That also includes a lot of Asians who come from China to find gold and strike it rich and then go back home after they've got some money. It's not just white people moving in to California. But when these Chinese in particular move into California, they face a lot of troubles. And so that first paragraph, Chun Pi, Pun Chi, our Chinese merchant here, talks about in that first paragraph the troubles. So third sentence is where they start. The shipmasters of your respected nation came over to our country, lauded the equality of your laws, extolled the beauty of your manners and customs, made it known you were extremely cordial toward the Chinese. We trusted your sincerity, he says. Not deterred by the long voyage, we came here presuming our arrival would be hailed with favor, but alas, what times are these? So what is happening? What does that mean? He says that, you Americans came over and you told us that you loved the Chinese and that you had such a great country and we believed you, and then you were turned out to be liars. Does this sound familiar to anybody? You turned out to be liars. He says, when former kind relations are forgotten, Chinese are viewed like thieves, like enemies. Our testimony is not received. We do not receive justice, he says. Violence to us. People are robbing us. Towards the end of that page, the second paragraph, the class that engage in digging gold are, as a whole, poor people. Our appearance is plain, our clothing poor. These people don't have a lot, Pun Chi says. And the little they have is taken away from them. Boatmen extort heavy fares. We are charged more than the usual fees. People rob us and laugh at us. There's a lot of ethnic prejudice. There's a lot of ethnic prejudice against the Mexicans. There's a lot of ethnic prejudice against the Chinese in various places in the West. Fourth and final document, there's also a lot of ethnic prejudice against the Cherokee, against Native American people. So another example about how Manifest Destiny doesn't really work out well for people in the 1830s and 40s. Now, as I hope we know, living in Oklahoma, the Cherokee are not the only tribe to experience their Trail of Tears, right? They're not the only ones who are kicked out of their ancestral homelands and forced to come to here, Oklahoma, Indian Territory. But they're one of the larger tribes. They're one of the most well-known tribes nationally, and they leave a lot of fun documents like this for us to discuss. So they're the tribe that we're going to be discussing today, but please do realize this happens to basically every tribe. Almost every tribe is kicked out of their ancestral homelands and forced to move somewhere or sometime. The Cherokee, one of the earlier ones for this to happen to, 1830s, 1836 in particular. This is a very short one, so I guess we're a little bit lucky. The middle of the paragraph here, they start talking about a contract, essentially. In consideration there of valuable concessions made by the Cherokee Nation, the United States solemnly guaranteed to said nations all their lands not ceded and pledged the faith of the government. So what does that mean? What are they saying here? The Cherokee tribe is saying, hey, we have a treaty with you already. We have a treaty with you already saying that if we do this for you, which we have, you will give us rights to our land. And now you're not doing that. Now you are trying to remove us. And the Cherokee, obviously, feel like this is very unfair. They object to removal. But interestingly, they object not to removal, not because it's unjust, not because this is their, ancestral homelands, not because they're their own nation, their own tribe. No. Towards the end of the middle there, they say the Cherokees were happy and prosperous. Here's the good part, they made rapid advances in civilization, morals, and in the arts and sciences. Little did they anticipate that when taught to think and feel as the American citizen and to have with him a common interest, that they were to be despoiled and forced to return to the savage life. What are they saying here? Why don't the Cherokee think that they should be removed? Because they're civilized. The Cherokee argue that they are civilized, that they are moral, that they are Christian, that they are educated in arts and in science, that they are very similar to American citizens. They're civilized. They've done everything that they were supposed to do. And yet they're still being treated as savages. They're still being removed into a new land. So, an interesting argument from the Cherokee tribe there in 1836. Now we know, it doesn't work. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work. They are removed, most of them, except the ones who can hide. They're removed to Oklahoma. But that is a story for another day. Thank you for discussing these Jacksonian American documents with me about Manifest Destiny, and I will see you next time.